Hello and welcome. My name's Inula Austin and I'm a medium, a therapist and a spiritual teacher, and I'm hoping that through these videos we'll be able to answer some of your questions on spirituality, some of the really big questions about life and the universe, life after death, angels, spirit guides, ghosts, what's God, what's the meaning or the purpose of your life, anything that you can think of really. Pop your question in the comments below and I'll see if I can find an answer to it for you. This is basically what I do with my time when I'm teaching, as well as teaching spiritual development and running development circles for psychic and mediumistic development. I also demonstrate mediumship and clairvoyance every week on the platform, and that is done in front of an audience, and of course we work live. There's no other way that we can work in that sense, in that scenario. And also I do private sittings, and I'm a trained level 1 QHHT practitioner as well. So we can put past life questions into the mix as well if you've got anything that you'd like to ask about that, anything about reincarnation. I don't claim to have the answers to absolutely everything, but I will endeavour and try my best to answer any questions that you may have. So today we're kicking off with a big question. What or who is God? Now, first and foremost, for me personally, the word God still has a lot of religious connotations and religious hangovers for me personally, because I was brought up in a Christian household and God meant going to church on a Sunday and reciting psalms and prayers and being on my best behaviour and doing all those wonderful things that you thought were going to get you into heaven, whilst avoiding all the things that you thought were going to send you elsewhere. Of course, that's all myth and legend anyway. But when it comes to that actual 3-letter word of God, it still makes me a little uncomfortable, and that's my own failing, and I realise that and I understand that, and I'm working on that. But as with all growth and all development, it's a constant path, it's an infinite pathway. So we can only do our best to grow and evolve our spirit and ourselves while we're on this earth plane. So what does the word God mean to you, I wonder? When we hear it, do we think of very vociferous, very happy, sort of preachy types of people who are very much proselytizing out there in the world, people trying to be missionaries, people who are into converting others into their way of thinking, that is? Or do you feel that the word God is an okay term to still use? Obviously it's incredibly personal. Personally, for myself, I prefer to use the term either Great Spirit or Source, because for me, that ultimate being that lies at the foundation of absolutely all creation is really nameless. And I feel that trying to pin the ultimate beginning, the alpha and the omega of everything, down to one single word or term is incredibly difficult, and it kind of does away with the actual sense of all that is. When we're talking in terms of infinity and the infinite, it's very difficult to put into physical, verbal terms, because we're taking something that's non-physical, obviously therefore non-verbal, and infinite, and we're using very finite verbal physical terms for that. And I think that doesn't do justice to the power and immensity that is that force at the back of everything. Some people are more happy these days calling that the universe, and I've noticed that, and sometimes it gets on my nerves if I'm perfectly honest, because to me the universe is the part or space that we live in that contains our solar system and all the other solar systems and galaxies. And the universe, although part of Source, is not itself Source. Perhaps that comes from a more theosophical kind of ideology. So we're talking about Alice Bailey and Blavatsky and that sort of teaching. But for me, the universe is a coy way of saying God, really, isn't it? So I prefer to use Source because I think that stands for and represents, symbolises where everything, all of creation has come forth from, the Source. And I'm comfortable with that. But of course it's entirely up to you what term you use. I'm very well aware at the moment that there's a resurgence of the idea that the term God has taken on many different meanings. It's meant gods, plural, in the past for polytheistic religions. It's meant the Lord, Yahweh, in the Old Testament and Hebrew religion. And for many people, it's kind of an uncomfortable term nowadays, particularly if you're of my generation. I'm in my late 40s now, and you grew up with that kind of having to attend assemblies at school and singing hymns and saying the Lord's Prayer, or rather chanting it. I don't think I ever said it with much meaning until I got a lot older. But I don't have a religion. I don't subscribe to any organised dogma. I much prefer spirituality. I think spirituality is your own personal pathway to finding out the truth, to seeking out the truth, and to making your own way there in your own good time. And I think that's what's really important about a spiritual pathway, is that it comes from within. It comes from within, in that place within you that is your eternal spirit self, which is always connected to the Source, to all that is, to God, to whatever you wish to call that, all-pervading power. But spirituality is not being told how you should do it, or what you should do, or if you are spiritual on a particular day of the week, that makes you a good person, and if you're not spiritual on that particular day, then you're not a good person. There are good and bad people in, if you can call people bad, there are good people and not so good people in every religion and every walk of life. So that's not to say that religions haven't served a purpose, particularly in the past in terms of organising people, but I think we should really move past that and into a future landscape where spirituality is the cornerstone of communities and people's understanding, and religious dogma, power, oppression, suppression, abuse, fear, all of that needs to be gotten rid of, and let people find their own way to the truth. That's what I did. It took me many years to get there, and searching, seeking, going through all religions, knowing and understanding deep down within me that there was a lot of truth at the centre of all of those religious practices and organised religions. But also at the same time knowing that not any single one of them was the one, capital T, capital O, the one. And understanding eventually that I had to find my own way back to my own spiritual centre. And in doing that, I found my real sense of self and a calmness and peace and tranquility that I had never known, I don't think. Perhaps I knew it in very early childhood, but it was something that eluded me for a very long time. And I wonder what your spiritual pathway is, whether you are on the pathway of a religious kind, where you're happy to read the so-called holy books of different religions and settle for that, or whether you're on a spiritual pathway and you're finding your own way to the truth and going forward, seeking. And the beauty of that is, I think, that with religions, in my experience, you take on a religion, you adhere to that religious tradition and all its organised sort of facets, and then you think, well, that's it, I've done it, great, I've achieved it. There's no learning, there's no evolution. If you're not very careful, there's no soul growth, and that's what we're all here for on the earth, is to grow our souls. I think with spirituality, that's very different. And the spiritual pathway allows us to continue to evolve as souls, continue to experience and expand. We're infinite beings, and part of our reason for coming into individual focus, individual consciousness, is to become as expansive and knowledgeable as we possibly can, and take in all the experiences that life has to offer in all its many varied colours and tones and light and shade. So have a think about it today. What does that term God mean to you? Are you a God person? Are you a source person? Are you a universe person? And ask yourself, why is it that you choose that particular term? And I'll see you again soon.